Hey, so welcome back to my channel. Okay, this is going to be a recap of Girlfriends Season 1, Episode 1. The show opens with basically giving you somewhat of a glimpse into the lives of three women who happen to be friends. They've been friends for many years. And so you have Linda, who is the housewife. She's comes across as a very mousy, kind of emotional woman, and her husband Micky, they're celebrating their wedding anniversary. Now I don't remember whether or not it mentioned the number of years they've been married. Probably did, but I just missed it. And so their daughter Ruby and their son Ryan, they work on the ship as entertainers, and so they were able to sit down and have dinner with the captain. And so Micky gets a text and he realizes that he forgot his glasses, so he goes back to their cabin. And after some time, they realized he hadn't returned. And so Linda went to find him, and then what she found was the room in kind of disarray. Like the door was the balcony door was open. You know, the chair was kind of overturned, and so it was assumed that he had gone overboard. He had fallen because he was pretty intoxicated. So it was assumed that he had gone overboard. And so they come back home. Obviously, they haven't found the body, so they're still searching for the body and trying to figure out what actually happened. And so while they're preparing for his memorial service, the son is kind of stepping in to help take care of some of the, to get the paperwork in order to kind of find out where they were financially, the insurance policies, and things of that nature. And he finds out that they increased their insurance, or they had a second insurance policy for £90,000. And he was basically explaining that if Micky's death was ruled to be a suicide, then the policy would pay nothing except what they put into it. So, and at that point, the only thing they paid into it was like $2,000. And of course, they're actually leveraged way beyond that. They actually owe more than that on their house. Even the $90,000 wouldn't cover all of the expenses. Okay, and next you have Sue, who is Miss Fabulous. Like, her hair is fabulous, her wardrobe, I mean, she from head to toe, you can't tell her nothing, right? And I believe she's editor-in-chief of a magazine called Adorable, and I think it's a bridal magazine, and it's owned by her lover of 30 years, John, who was a complete and total asshole. But she has actually been the other woman for about 30 years, and they actually have a son together. And so she's somewhere being pampered. It's the day of John's memorial service. And so she is at a spa getting nipped and tucked and pulled and tweezed, right? And so she receives a phone call from Louise, who I'm not sure if Louise is her personal receptionist or if she's just a receptionist for the office. But there's a hot young tenderoni in the office now named Stacy. And we're talking about all three of these women are women of a certain age. And so Louise informs Sue that Stacy is asking for her personal contacts. So of course she was like, no, hell to the no. And so she basically gets, bolts out because she has to get back to the office to try to figure out what is going on. So on her way there, while she's trying to apply under eye concealer, again, Miss Fabulous, she rear ends a guy. So this guy is cussing and fussing, and rightfully so. She wasn't paying attention. She messed in front of her. I don't know if there was a Benz, BMW, I'm not sure, but she had some little fancy car, and tore the grill up. I mean, it was just a mess. All so she can get back to this office to find out what's going on with why Miss Stacy wants her personal contacts. So she arrives, right, and Louise kind of greets her at the door. Louise was trying to get her attention for a particular reason, which I'll let you know in a minute. So she walks into John's office and basically was like, "What do you mean? Why is she asking for my personal contact? She's a trainee." And he was like, "She's not a trainee, and she's happened to be very talented." You can tell it's just like a guy's point of Stacey could very well be good at what she does. Who the hell knows? But his reaction of trying to explain is that of a guy as a guy who's attracted to a woman trying to make it seem like his decisions are not based on his attraction to her. So again, Sue and John have been lovers for about 30 years now. Okay. And so he starts talking to her about some cockamamie position, like he wants her to transition into being a consultant. And she was looking at him like, why in the world would I want to do that? And he made reference to a article that she wanted to publish, which is called Second Chances or Second Time Around, which basically profiles older women who are getting married for the second time. And he thinks it's a lousy idea. The bridal game is for it's a young thing, and the woman in the magazine, he was like, she's not even attractive, and basically he wants her to move into a consultant position because he wants to move Stacy into her old position, because Stacy is young, she's hip, she's more in tune with women her age, right? And so she basically fussed him out and leaves. And so she's actually leaving to head to Micky's memorial service. And so she was told that at this point that it was Stacy's birthday, and she was actually asked if she was going to she wanted to put something in the card for Stacy, and of course she was like, mm-mm. And she was also told that they were going to meet up after work at a restaurant or a bar to celebrate Stacy's birthday. When she was she was not interested at all initially. Okay, so Louise is basically still trying to get her attention to let her know that basically that she didn't blend in her under eye concealer. So she's basically been walking around the office cussing and fussing, trying to tell people off with this thick white line under both her eyes. And so when she saw herself in the mirror, she was just she was appalled. That was funny. Okay, so next you have Gail, who works as a crossing guard. And so Gail is in the middle of a divorce, or she's basically filed for a divorce. And her son comes home. He's actually been in prison for almost 2 years, but she told people that he was in Thailand working, doing something. So all this time, all these people, nobody knew where her son was, right? So he comes home, and he's basically on house arrest. And so you see him, the officer coming there to put the bracelet, the ankle thing on monitor on him, and basically explaining to him all the rules and regulations and how it work and curfew and that whole thing. And so you could tell right off that Tom is just a spoiled damn brat. He's an only child, and it's something about boys being an only child, and the mother. It's just her relationship with her son played a huge role in why her marriage fell apart. And so while they were talking, she, was looking through the mail, and she received her divorce decree. So she kind of got emotional because at this point she's like, okay, it's final. Like, there's one thing to go through it, but that was pretty much the nail in the coffin. And, she did get choked up a little bit. And so they're both on, so everybody's on their way to the memorial service. Gail is there with her grandson. And Dave was also invited because, obviously, at the time, they were all friends. They've all been friends for years. And so she's standing there basically talking to him and kind of reminiscing. And he basically told her that you were the one that wanted the divorce. So he didn't even want the divorce, really. He was just sick of he was just sick of her son. And so Tom and Andrew, who's Sue's son, they're kind of talking. Andrew was kind of, Tom is trying to explain to him where he's been for the last, year and a half. And you could tell Andrew was just not buying it. He's just like, oh, okay, so how was all that? How'd that all work out for you? And so he saw his mom and Dave talking, and he just had to waltz over there and, put his 2 cents in, and, why are you bothering my mom? And Tom is a hot ass mess, okay? And so Linda, Brian, and oh my goodness, Ruby arrived, and they kind of met up with Gail, and they kind of, small talk. And so at this point, they're all in the service. Sue, who's running late, she walks in, making all this damn noise. I think she almost fell. It was just, it was just ridiculous. I mean, it was so much noise that the priest had to stop, and he had everybody turn to look and see what she had going on. It was just a hot mess. Okay, so they go through the memorial service, and they end up back at Linda's house for the repast. Everybody's kind of milling around talking. You had Gail and Sue talking for a minute. They're getting caught up, and then Gail and Linda talking. And eventually, Andrew walks over to Gail, and he was like, he's basically his mother, Sue. She has a birthday coming up, and he wants to plan a surprise birthday party for her. So he was just basically asking Gail if she would help him plan the party. I mean, that was pretty much the gist of their conversation. And so Ryan, who's Linda's son, he gave a little speech as far as thanking everybody for coming, and he found some video of them when they were all kids, as far as Linda, Sue, Gail, Micky. I don't know if Dave was involved in there, but he was playing the video, and everybody was kind of like, when you kind of reminisce and look back on, like, was I ever really that young? So while this is going on, Sue has an outburst, right? And people are like, what in the world? So she storms out, and Andrew goes out behind her trying to make sure his mother's okay. Because Jennifer, okay, now what's going on now? Basically, she received a text saying that Stacy was going to be the new editor-in-chief. She received it via text, okay? And it didn't come from John. So this man has been screwing you for 30 years, and he couldn't even pick up the phone. Basically, she was going to be forced into that consulting job, whether she wanted it or not. So Andrew and his father does not have a relationship at all. Andrew is disgusted. He hates his father. He hates his father for how his father's treated him. He hates his father for how he's treated his mother. He hates his mother. I don't think he loves his mother, but he doesn't have a lot of respect for her because of the way she's allowed herself to be treated over the years. And so Sue leaves, because she's going to head back to. She's going to head back to the office to chew John's ass out again, and probably Stacy too. And so Andrew and Gail are still in the backyard. He's just basically venting about how tired he is, how sick he is of his father, and basically saying that he thinks that his mother should sue for age discrimination. And then of course Gail was like, no, that's your father. You don't want to do that. Basically, and he was looking at her like, bitch, yes I do. I can't stand the bastard, and anything that I can do to make his life miserable, that's exactly what I want to do. It's gonna make me feel right good. Okay, so So they flashed to Sue. Sue didn't actually go back to the office because I guess she remembered that they were going to the bar after work for Stacy's birthday celebration. So Sue shows up at the restaurant. Of course, they're surprised because, of course, no one expected her to show. And so John sees her coming towards the table, and of course he jumps up and walks over to meet her, basically like, let me try to pull her to the side before she starts some shit, right? And so he asked her, he grabbed the picture of, I think they were having mojitos or something, but so he grabbed the picture and he handed it to a waitress, and just asked him, he wanted to refill or whatever. And he asked her, what are you doing here? And she, was trying to have a conversation with him. And she basically said she didn't want the consulting job, that she's the editor-in-chief, and that's basically where she wanted to stay. And he was like, that's not an option anymore. And he basically walked away from her like he had just ended the conversation. People don't like that. Women don't like that. You just walked away. No, the conversation's not over until I've said every damn thing I wanted to say, whether you want to hear it or not. So that was basically her attitude. Like, she's like, I want to know why you think that I don't know, she said, I'm no longer good at my job, or I want to know why you want me to take this consulting position. And so Miss Stacy, bitch, this is where, okay, Stacy would have got cussed the hell out. So Stacy jumps up and like, just give John a break, right? And then she had this look on her face like she was ready to knock if you buck, like she was ready to lay hands on Sue. And so John puts his hand on her shoulder and was like, no, don't worry about it, this and that. And so of course she looked at her and started laughing, and she said, you're screwing her, aren't you? And of course Stacy's like, what? I can't believe, no, and John was like, just ignore her. He's like, no, I'm not going to ignore her. I'm like, girl, you got to get your ass whooped. And so she basically took the table with the mojitos and all the little drinks, and she almost flipped the table over. This is Sue. John got soaking wet, and she basically said, I want your stuff out of our flat, or I guess that's an apartment or some kind of loft or something. I want your stuff out of there today. And he basically had to remind her that that loft is in his name. And he basically said that the reason you're not getting that position, he was loud. This one he was loud because he was embarrassed. She had made the scene and he was embarrassed. The reason you're not getting that job is because you're out of touch. Basically, you're too old. And he called her irrelevant. And of course, she walked out. She storms out, grabs her stuff, and she walks out. And then she has an emotional break. She just burst into tears. This man that she's loved, been in love with for the last 30 years, had his child. She's tolerated so much shit over these last 30 years. And he says to her that you're too old and basically you're irrelevant. I think that was just too much for her. And so she goes over to her mom's house. I don't know if, for mothers do what they do, to make you feel better. They always know the right thing to say to make you feel better. And so she gets there, and Mama's got a boo named Frank. And so she tells Sue that Frank proposed to her. So Mama is now engaged, and I think Mama's 80-something years old, and she's engaged. And of course, Sue's looking like, what? So the next thing you know, she's bailing out the door. And her mom was like, what is going on? She was basically like, I can't believe you're going to marry that guy. She said, she was like, what about the house? If something happens to you, he's going to get the house. This house has been in our family for generations. And her mom was like, he doesn't want the house. And she was going on. Basically, Sue wasn't in any kind of emotional state to see sense. So she was like, I was going to ask you if I could move back temporarily because I have to move out of the law, but I can see that I'll just be in the way. And her mom was like, of course, you can always come home. You can always move back. But again, Sue, she's having an emotion. She's doing some emotional upheaval, didn't want to hear it. She jumped in her car and sped off. So the next thing you see is her at Gail's house. She's at Linda's house. And Gail is there also, and they're sitting around having drinks, kind of reminiscing, kind of talking about their relationships, basically. You know how girls do when we get together and get a few cocktails in us. And Gail finds out, because you find out that Gail, she loves Dave, and she doesn't really want to be divorced. And Sue tells her that that in your divorce decree you have up to 6 weeks to change your mind. And so of course that piqued Gail's interest. She was like, oh, I have 6 weeks before it's really finalized. And so she is basically kind of worked through her emotions about Dave. She loves Dave and she wants to get back with Dave. But then this whole issue between Dave and her son, because they never got along, because you get the feeling, based on the conversation that they had at the wedding, that Tom, like I said, it's like Tom can do no wrong in her eyes. It's like everything, she just has an excuse for everything where he's concerned. And for an upstanding guy, which Dave seems to be, that can be quite frustrating and annoying. And so, they go through their whole emotion thing. Of course, Sue's talking about what happened with her and John. And then there's a knock at the door. So he goes to the door. It's actually no, wait a minute. Yeah, it's actually the police, because at this point it's late at night. So at this point it's the police. They're banging on the door, and it's like, and Linda answers the door. She's like, what in the world is going on? So they're looking for Tom. And she's like, well, he's not here. Why are you looking for him? And so they barge in the house, and they're looking around and going upstairs. And so, of course, the ladies follow them up, and they're banging on Ruby's door, because at one point in time, Ruby and Tom had a relationship. And so when Tom went to prison, because, of course, nobody knew that Tom went to prison, she thought that Tom just up and left her. So at the wedding, Lord, at the memorial service, they kind of sat down and talked, and she explained. And at this point, he still didn't explain where he was, but he did apologize for leaving the way that he did. Now, the police barging into the house. Now everybody knows, right? So they go up to Ruby's room, and they done got it on, in Ruby's room. So the police go in, they grab Tom, they take him into custody. Gail breaks down. She starts crying like, oh, it's just a whole misunderstanding. He basically lost track of time, and he was supposed to be back home, but didn't make it in time, and so they came and picked him up. And that's when the truth came out about where he was this last year and a half. And so they, after all of that, they're all getting ready. They're getting ready for bed, and then there's a knock at the door. Linda goes downstairs to open the door. And that's when we first see Carol Hardcastle, this crazy bitch. And so she basically she asked for Linda, she said, yeah, that's me. And she said she was talking to Micky when Linda pushed him off the boat. And that's how it went off. So, a very good show, very entertaining. I haven't decided yet whether or not I'm going to upload all of these episodes, because the first season every episode is up on Amazon, or if I'm just going to do one a week. I'm going to determine that probably before my next upload. But yeah, I am going to leave this here, and if you guys have Amazon Prime, I would say check it out. It's a good show. So I will talk to you guys later.